it talks about the minhagim of Avelus on the Omer. So last week I said I'm not a big fan of them because I think that just like the Gemara says explicitly, we have a way out of the four fasts when that time comes. So to assuming there is a form of mourning you are supposed to observe now, not like the Rambam, we're already beyond that point. Okay, yeah, the PDF sent. So you could open it up. I'm going to put it on the screen right now. Over here, we have the tour. So I'm going to read what the tour says. You should know the tour's imagination. I don't use it in a bad way, by the way. The way he envisions this minhagei sphira is radically different than the way most people observe it. By the way, you will not find in classic printings of the tour and the Shulchan Aruch and all that the commonly accepted idea that you're not supposed to listen to music during this time. You're not going to say it. The Shulchan Aruch will say, and we don't listen to music on the radio or on MP3s or whatever it is, right? Why can't the Shulchan Aruch say such a thing? Because it didn't exist. So, what? Yeah, there are those who forbid listening to music all year round. What? Yeah. Yeah, you can't listen to music all year round. I'm saying that specifically, the idea that, no, you can listen to music, just during Sefirat you can't, is not something you're going to find. By the way, that I was hoping people said because there's no such thing as recorded music. It meant when the Shulchan Aruch says no music during the all year round, what does he mean? No playing live instrumental music. Okay. So like Rav Fisher says, we're much weaker nowadays. I tried to keep that minhag when I first came to Eretz Yisrael. I lived in Yerushalayim.
Most of the time, said that like listening to the radio was just like singing.
Yeah, I know there are arguments for heter. That's the way we grew up. But I tried to keep this when I first came to Eretz Yisrael, and I couldn't stand it. I did a Hataras Nadarim. I couldn't. Two times I did a real serious Hataras Nadarim because I don't know, it affects you. If you can't hear music, you're gonna, like I said, we're weak. Let's see what the tour says. The first thing the tour brings here is no weddings. And the reason is so that we not have too much simcha during that time, because that's when Rabbi Akiva's students died. There's a source here, the Rigiyat. When was the Rigiyat? When did he live? I forgot to make a note of this, but it's not so. It's a little bit late. It's not like a Rashi and the Rambam Rishon. Okay, you have it. You tell me when, I'll put it in there. He also says there are places Yesh Mikoma Shnagush Lo Lis Taper. When the Torah writes this, he says that's not our minhag. He says the no wedding thing, that's everybody. No one gets married during Omer. By the way, this is modified. And he's also said it's Nisuin, not Erusin. And others who wrote on the tour that, well, for those who need to do the mitzvah, they're chasuch evonim. They've never been married before, they have no children. They still have a mitzvah to do so. This is talking about second marriages. Okay, people have already been there. And I remember Rabbi Rabinovich pointed this out to me. What? 10:38? Really? That early? Okay, so I'm wrong. Okay, so let's see. So we have here the no wedding, and the Nagu Shalolis Topper says Yesh Mikomos. There are some places. What does the tour mean? When you see that in where the tour lived, that wasn't the minhag. In some places, but it's not a universal thing. And then he says that he found it written, Matzati Katuv. This is even less. Not that this is the minhag in all places, or there's some place minhag. It says I found this written, which means I'm not familiar with this as a living minhag. I just saw this written. Because Rabbi Akiva's students tended to die during that time. Okay, from the Shkia, and they were buried after that. They were having funerals all night. That's a little bit iffy now that we know, for example, that the story about Rabbi Akiva's students, how they died from Askara, etc., during Omer time was self-censorship on the parts of the sages. And that Rabbi Akiva's students didn't die of disease, they died of battle. They were Bar Kokhba's soldiers. That's what really killed them. And this is attested to, by the way, neither Gaonim who point this out, that was an act of self-censorship, and you can find others, have done research into this matter in the Rabbi Shirim about this. This is also well known to secular historians. Okay, the secular history books also record how Rabbi Akiva was a big proponent of the second revolt against the Romans, and it was his followers who were the biggest supporters of Bar Kokhba and fell in his battles. Okay, so you don't have to be strictly Talmudic to discover this fact of history. It's attested to in many places. So there's minhag not to do malacha, And then he says, "V'nagu anashim shelo lasoth melacha mishetishka chama." And he also says, why? This has less to do with mourning, and this is something that most people aren't aware of. Why would the Torah say the women don't do malacha once the sun sets during Sefirat HaOmer? Because that's the time to count the Sefira. By the way, just to know, because Ikar Adin, according to the Torah and the Rush, like the Rambam is, you count Sefirat HaOmer from when? From Shkia. So that's a holy time. It's like Shabbos, Sheva Shabbosos Timimos Tiena. So you treat it like Shabbos. So there we have 4 issues brought up by the Torah. And by the way, music is not mentioned specifically. There are those who say that the idea of no listening to music is part of this extension. If you can't have a wedding, when did you have music back in the day? Before they had recorded music. Either you were a musician, you could create your own music, or you actually splurged for your daughter's wedding and you hired a guy with a flute and a guy with a drum and a guy with some sort of string instrument, and they played music for you at the wedding. So music was a treat at weddings. So if you don't have weddings, mainly you don't have music. Okay, that's where it came from. So the Beis Yosef gives sources for these. Notice the Beis Yosef sources. You're not going to find this in the Talmud, that all these things, because they're not in the Talmud. Instead, he says this idea about not having weddings. Who does he quote? Rabbeinu Yerucham. And when's your Rabbeinu Yerucham from? Basically the 1300s. He was born in 1290. That's kind of late. That's 200 years after Rashi died. He was born 200 years after Rashi. And this idea about no haircuts, who is it from? Rabbi Yeshua ibn Shuib, who was one of the Rishonim. But I ask you this question. He says no haircuts. He found this because it says in Drashas Yom Rishon of Pesach that of course, a minhag where he lived. So this is a very specific minhag also from a 13th century Rishon, a very specific place. This doesn't mean this is far from being, like the Torah says, a universal minhag. I wonder if Rashi even knew of such a thing, not to get their hair cut during Sefira. I wonder if Rambam had such an idea. But this is a very specific thing. Also, I remember someone quoting, well, this Rishon says it, no haircut, so that must be the overriding rule. And I'm thinking, can you give me one more halacha in a different place that we base on this particular Rishon? No, Rabbi Yeshua ibn Shuib. Now, I don't know, but I'm an ignoramus. Perhaps you guys know. Okay, but it's not your typical halachic source. Next, this idea of yesh mistaprim lag omer, the whole idea of assuming that there is some sort of time when you don't have haircuts. There are different opinions. You have the Avudraham, the Evan Hayarchi, the Razah, that's Rabbi Zerachi Alevi, and also Rabbi Ibn Shuib. Different ideas about when it's inappropriate to get a haircut. These are all also after Rashi, after Rambam. But either way, they're arguing about how to do this. Assuming there is a no haircut minhag, when exactly is it? You guys know there are different days. You have to add up 33 days, and is it starting from when Rosh Chodesh Iyar is, or the starting from Pesach, right? You know that whole thing. So that's what he brings over here. Yeah, he brings up both opinions there. And then this Matzasi Kasuv also, Rabbeinu Yerucham says that in the name of Rabbi Haigon. Wow, that's an amazing one. Not to do malacha from Pesach ad Atzeres from the Shkia. Now that we said, it could be because Rabbi Akiva's students died and being buried overnight, or it's just this idea that Shkia time is like Shabbos because the Sheva Shabbos is Tumimos Tiena. That's an older idea. That's what Rav Haigon is talking about. That there's a sabbatical idea going into the Sefira. Hold on 1 second. I need to start this. Welcome. You okay? Everything worked out? Okay. Don't worry. If you want, there's some chips here we could open up. Okay, I'm over here. Next. So that's basically what? Okay, so take out another bag if you want. There's some other guys want chips. So sorry, there's nothing else right now. Okay, so that's what we have. Now this is very important. Why? Because this is unusual for the Beis Yosef. Normally, the Beis Yosef, when he wants to give us halacha, what would he do? He would give us, let's say, Talmudic sources, and his favorite sources are, let's say, Rif and Rambam, Rosh. You'd say where the Rosh says such a thing, or he would bring the Ran and the Rashba, right? The usual Rishonim. But in this case, we have quite unusual sources brought up by the Beis Yosef, none of which are Talmudic. The Vilna Gaon does something differently. The Vilna Gaon's whole point in the Ber Hagra is to try to give you Talmudic sources as early as possible. The Vilna Gaon's goal is to give it as early as possible. So you read the Bar Agra on this very same siman, and it's nothing like the Beis Yosef. A lot of times you read the Bar Agra, and it's actually reminiscent of the Beis Yosef. Why? Because the Vilna Gaon is using Talmudic sources, and the Beis Yosef used Talmudic sources. And sometimes it's just almost like a Kitzer Beis Yosef. If you want, we can see examples of that on some other time. But you see here that the Beis Yosef is non-Talmudic in this case, and the Gra is going to be Talmudic, but in a very different way. Look at this. So when the Shulchan Aruch says Nohagim Shelo Lisa Isha Bein Pesach La'atzeres, the Vilna Gaon has a note over here. Okay. Kamosha Kosav Beferek, what does it say? Ha'ayin Yud Siman Beis Tana Kulam. What is this referring to? What is this referring to? This is in Yevamos. Okay. This is where it talks about Rabbi Akiva's students died. Okay. But it does not explain why the whole prayer has to be observed in the morning. This is the source for the piece of history, censored history, that Rabbi Akiva's students died being Pesach Letzeres. The Gra is telling you where to find the story about Rabbi Akiva's students dying. But the Vilna Gaon is not showing you why it follows that suddenly there's now a 49-day or 33-day mourning period as a result of that. It doesn't say that in the Talmud. Actually, it says that Rabbi Akiva learned his lesson. What was the lesson that Rabbi Akiva learned? Ba'erev al Tanakh Yadecha says that he lost all his first students, his first generation of students, 24,000 or 12,000 pairs, but the world was dark from that. So he raised up a new generation of students, his top 5, the next generation. That's what the Gemara there is talking about. So you see here that this I like to tell people is they say the Psalm, what is that? The David Hashem Or Vishi, which Psalm number is that? 23, 28, 30? One of the early ones. Psalm 27? I think it's Psalm 27. Okay. So they tell you, why do they say it every day during Elul and up to Shmini Atzeres? What's the ostensible reason? Because there's psukim in there that seem to be referring to the High Holy Day season, right? Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur Rem is there, and even Sukkot and just unto Sukkot, not Shmini Atzeres. Now that's all well and good that those psukim are remes to that. But that doesn't tell me that I have to say the psalm every single day during that period, twice a day. That doesn't follow. I told people, there's a Tehillim that refers to the current parshios that we're reading according to the annual cycle. How's it go? Miha isha chafetz chayim, ohev yomim l'rav tov, nesor l'shon chlamei uspafech midabir ra, sur meira vasei tov, bakei shalom v'rod fehu. You guys know that pasuk. So Miha isha chafetz chayim is a reference to Parshas Shmini, which begins with Nadav and Avihu dying, but then Moshe Rabbeinu gave commandments also to Aaron. Here's how you not die if you want to serve the Mishkan. Don't drink wine. And here's the animals that are kosher to eat. Okay? Nitzor l'shon chameira usfasecha medabir mirma. Don't speak lashon hara. That's a reference to the next parsha, Tazria Mitzora, which is all about saras, which is the punishment for speaking lashon hara. Nitzor l'shon chameira usfasecha medabir mirma. Surmira Vase Tov. Surmira is the next parsha. What's the next parsha in the list? Achremos. How do you Surmira? Yom Kippurim. The Vidui and Kapara. Ase Tov is Kedoshim, which is full of all these positive commandments. Here's how you be holy. Do this and do that. Bakei Shalom Virod Fehu. Run after peace. Who are the people who ran after peace? Once again, we're talking about Aaron and the Kohanim, and that's why we have Emor El Kohanim. So you see that those psukim in Tehillim are clear reference to this series of parshios. Am I now going to tell people from now on, once we get to Parshas Shmini, until we finish reading Parshas Emor, you have to say this particular psalm where these psukim are located twice a day every day? Does that follow? Don't want to say this too out loud because maybe people will start doing it, but that doesn't follow. So that's also what you hear having in the Gra. The Gra is not telling you you have to mourn during this period. The Gra is showing you where the story of Rabbi Akiva is located. But he's not giving you a source for it, and therefore you have to mourn for it. Right? That's a very important thing. Next, to have we allow people to get engaged. And la'aris l'kadesh shapir dami. They're the same thing. To do the first stage of the wedding, that's fine, but nisuin is forbidden. And the Vilna Gaon gives you a source, which is in also, I think it's Yivamis there, which is talking about during the 9 days. Now says weddings during the 9 days. Is the Vilna Gaon saying also din? No, the Vilna Gaon is saying that this concept during the 9 days, Chazal said you're not supposed to have these things. So they took that minhag and transposed it from the 9 days. It said during the 9 days we're sad. So during the Omer we're sad. The Vilna Gaon is not telling you that this is the source for what the Shulchan Aruch is saying. He's showing you the source for the concept that one way to show miut simcha is to have less weddings. Make sense? Next. Nisuin nami misha kafatz v'konas inon shnoso. And the person who does misha kafatz right say ayin perak dal d'vsachim nun beis my area chulei hasam. What is he talking about here? The Vilna Gaon is referencing that idea of a person doing malacha erev Shabbos or erev Yontif. The Shulchan Aruch said we're not supposed to have weddings during the Omer, but if a person went and did it, okay, whatever, we're not going to punish him. After the fact, it's okay. The Vilna Gaon says that this is reminiscent, but not sourced from this halacha. The halacha is talking about malacha on erev Yontif and erev Shabbos. And, there's a halacha. You're not supposed to do malacha erev Pesach. And they ask, how's it different for every other erev Shabbos? Also, erev Shabbos and erev Yontif, it says you're not supposed to already desist from malacha, right? So the Gemara answers, erev Pesach, it's an actual isser. An erev Shabbos, the Chazal were recommending against it. They say you're not going to see a siman bracha. But erev Pesach, it's actual time to do korbanos, so it's like already chol moed, more severe prohibition. And that's why they tell you if you did malacha erev Shabbos, when the sages don't want you to, they want you to be getting ready for Shabbos. By malacha, they don't mean cooking gefilte fish and washing up in hot water. Heating the water and cooking the gefilte fish are malachas. They don't mean that malach on erev Shabbos. They meant you are a farmer and you're just going to continue farming until it's Shabbos, or you're a carpenter to continue kind of carpenting. Is that the verb? What is a carpenter do? Okay, whatever it is, that's what the sages meant. You're not supposed to do that, but you're not going to be punished for doing so. You're not going to you're going to have the lack of blessing. So the Vilna Gaon once again here is not giving you a source for what the Shulchan Aruch is saying. He's showing you how what the Shulchan Aruch is saying has been borrowed from a different halachic concept elsewhere. Okay, so the idea mourning in this period, yeah, Rabbi Akiva's students did die. That does say in the Talmud. The fact that you're not supposed to have weddings, yeah, there's an idea that when we're sad, we don't want weddings, and this idea that there's certain times you're not supposed to do malacha. Here he is, says the idea of noagim shlilis taper, the whole thing about no haircuts. The Vilna Gaon doesn't even talk about the premise that there's a time not giving haircuts. The Vilna Gaon just goes into the calculations, which idea that assuming it's not time for haircuts, which calculation do you use? And he rehashes in a good way what the Beis Yosef already brought you. Is it, how do you calculate the 33 days? Prosat Tzeres, is it from Rosh Chodesh Iyar? He just brings those days in the calculation. But the idea that you shouldn't cut your hair during the Omer time doesn't go proven. It's unproven. And by the way, what is the Vilna Gaon's opinion about this? We discussed previously. You can determine the Vilna Gaon's opinion about this from what he did during the 9 days. And that is, during the 9 days, Minhag Ashkenaz was no getting ready for Shabbos, no cleaning your clothes for Shabbos, no kibbutz, no rechitza l'chvod Shabbos, or l'kibud Shabbos, and no putting on your Shabbos clothes even for Shabbos, no grooming for Shabbos. That was Minhag Ashkenaz during the 9 days. That's what will let up into Shabbos Chazon. What was the Vilna Gaon's practice on Shabbos Chazon? Wash his clothes, change his clothes, may kaf regel ad rosh. You're supposed to wear complete Shabbos clothes, wash up, and of course, grooming. Everything that you should do every Erev Shabbos, you even do, even if Shabbos itself is Tisha B'Av. Okay, it's a Shavua Shechalbo. You have to do everything with Vod Shabbos. So Kal HaOmer, the Vilna Gaon would say, these all apply during the Omer. It's kind of strange that during the Omer they tell you don't shave or groom yourself, but of course you could do laundry and wear Shabbos clothes. They all go hand in hand, according to the Vilna Gaon. That's the Ikr Din. That's also what you have in the Rambam. All of those are part of Kibbutz Shabbos. So people who know, like the Gra, like I said, when I was in high school, the halacha with regards to dress code was what? Not that you're allowed to shave for Shabbos. It's that you may grow a beard. The usual dress code was, of yeshivas Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan, like in other yeshivas, is and always was, what? You have to be clean shaven. If you're a bacher, you're clean shaven. In high school, you're pretty much not married. So you have to be clean shaven all the time. And during the Omer, they'll let you not shave. Okay. The question wasn't, can I shave l'chvod Shabbos? They're assuming you do. Okay. Assuming shaving is mutter, and I'm lumping all grooming together. Haircuts and shaving are the same din. Okay. Grooming. So the assumption isn't always was that. And that's a tradition from the Gra. And then he says, the Shulchan Aruch says, you shouldn't have different minhagim. Lo yunhagu b'ir achas miktsas minagzeh miktsas minagzeh. If there are people who are holding the prohibition of no grooming the first 33 days, then they shouldn't have people doing the last 33 days. You have to have one minhag. So the Vilna Gaon gives you the source for in Yavamas again for losis go to do. Yes, that's a general rule. You shouldn't have competing halachas, competing minhagim of Isser in one place. Like I hold, what did it say? We hold this as Usser, you hold it's Mutter, and we're doing it at the same time. That doesn't look right. And then he says also check out an Eruvin, where it says you're not supposed to pick and choose kulas. You can't shop for rabbis. Oh, I like his kulas. I'll do his kulas and his kulas, even when there's a contradiction. Or the occasional person likes to shop for chumras, of which there are many today. Right? There are people like that. Just find the most machmir opinion in any regard, or just try to satisfy all opinions, which means you're always machmir. That's also wrong. But the Vilna Gaon here is not telling you about this particular issue. He's just saying in general, there's losis go to do and no picking and choosing. You have to stick with one shita. Once again, what are we going to do here? There's the Vilna Gaon says about this idea that women, it says the women aren't supposed to do malacha from Pesach ad Atzeres when the sun goes down. The Vilna Gaon gives a very interesting halacha over here, a very interesting source, as it says at the end of Moed Katan Kaf Zayin. What is Moed Katan Kaf Zayin talking about there? That women don't do malacha when they count spira? No, it's talking about the idea that women are buried immediately. We don't take a woman's beer, B-I-E-R, out to the street and have hespedim there. It's not covered of the woman. We try to bury her. Sometimes it's not proper. Nivel amaze. So the idea that with regards to women, we give them more of a covet. So the Vilna Gaon saying that this is a special privilege of women that they don't have to do malach at this time. But he's once again not showing us a source for what the Shulchan Aruch is saying. He's telling us that what the Shulchan Aruch is describing as a minhag during Omer has a precedent somewhere else. Oh boy. And he says, check out the Bahag and the Tur, and it talks about that thing with Shabbos Shabboson. And like I said over here, the Vilna Gaon says, look at that thing. I concept that when it's sphere counting time, especially at night, it's sort of a greater Shabbos, right? Which is, once again, not Talmudic. So what do we get from the Gra? Did the Gra hold of any of these minhagim necessarily? So tradition and from extrapolation, other places we sit, the Vilna Gaon wasn't exactly a big fan of this, especially that we have that rule that we can discern from the Gra, which is whenever you have a clear mitzvah to perform, it trumps the minhag not to. How many examples can you give of the Gra? Well, everything. Everything the Gra did was this principle. The whole thing with reinstituting the Birkas Kohanim was an example. Minhag Ashkenaz was not to have Birkas Kohanim every day. What was the Vilna Gaon's opinion? It's a mitzvah. You have to have it every day. Minhag was you live in Vilna. You live in Poland. You don't live in Eretz Yisrael. What was the Vilna Gaon's attempt to do? Go back to Eretz Yisrael. Minhag was you read the Nevi'im from a book or a special Torah book. The Vilna Gaon says you make a bracha on this. You're supposed to read the Nevi'im from Sefer Navi, and numerous other halachas where the minhag was not to, and the Vilna Gaon reinstituted. No, we are going to do so. That's his overriding rule, especially this one that the Vilna Gaon didn't hold of the whole no haircuts thing during Sefirat. So I wonder what the Vilna Gaon would say explicitly if someone asked him, Rebbe, can I get married during the Omer? Well, how old are you? 18. We haven't any children yet. No. Okay, so I would imagine that Shitas Agra does allow for weddings during the Omer, especially because there's actually no Talmudic source for it. During the 9 days, he would say, no, we don't do that. But the idea, like you see here, so let's contrast the Vilna Gaon with the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef tells you which Rishon had these minhagim first. The Vilna Gaon does something different. He tries to find Talmudic sources for similar concepts, but not for the actual minhag. Okay, so do what you will with that.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.